Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mike Ferguson. I've got Mike Gibson, Gibby, back with me again today. I have to say right off the bat that this is part 3 of the Dennis Rader BTK story. So if you've not listened to parts 1 and 2, you got to stop the podcast, go back, download, and listen to those first, or you're missing out, and this one's probably not going to make as much sense. So Gibby, what's going on today?
Hey, man. It's nice to be in your studio today.
Yeah, so this show's different in a couple of different ways. The first one is Gibby's in studio for the first time. We got all of our mics and everything set up. We were doing it by Skype before, but we're almost professional.
Almost.
So from now on, we'll be in studio, and hopefully the sound is good and the production value continues to go up and up.
In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, caught in a lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR.
Please visit the show's website at truecrimealltime.com. While you're there, make sure you click on the Amazon banner for any of your Amazon shopping. Amazon gives us a little bit of love back. It doesn't cost you anything extra for your purchases. And while you're there, look for the Patreon button. I've updated our Patreon page, and you can support the show for as little as $1 a month. And we've built in some extra little goodies into some different levels of the Patreon sponsorship. Also, click on the contact page. There you can see it. Follow us on Facebook at True Crime All the Time. I've become a lot more active on Twitter in the last week. Follow us at TC All the Time, at TC All the Time. And there's also Instagram, Tumblr. You can see all of that stuff. And the biggest thing is, if you like the show, make sure you're sharing it with your friends, retweet us, share the posts on Facebook. It really helps out, gets us more listeners, helps the show grow a lot. So speaking of that, I've got a couple of shout outs. We had our first financial sponsor, and that's Roberta in Ohio. So big shout out to Roberta. Shout out to Maria from Pennsylvania. She's been really helping out on Twitter by retweeting and getting a lot of information out to a lot of people on Twitter. It's helped us gain a lot of new listeners. And also shout out to Christina in Vancouver, British Columbia. So that's our first official non-US shout out.
Wow.
Also, if you are following us on Facebook and Twitter, you can see this week that I put out, floated the idea of doing some listener driven shows, where a listener has a hometown or surrounding area type murder case. The listener would actually Skype in and be a part of the show. So if that's something that interests you, please reach out. All of our contact information is on the page. All right, Gibby, what do you think? Are we ready for the final part of the Dennis Rader BTK saga?
I think we are. I know I am.
I don't know about you. I've had to take multiple showers after not together, obviously.
No.
I don't want to start any crazy rumors, but
I draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, you got to draw it somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, so we're picking back up in September of 1986, and at this point, Rader's got his eye on a woman named Vicki Wegerle. She's 28 years old, mother of 2. And Rader would, we've talked about this a lot, but, he's going through his trolling and stalking phase. He would walk by Vicki's house a lot. And it was said that he would hear Vicki playing the piano. And so eventually she becomes a project. Again, we talked about that.
Right. Kind of locks in on her.
Yep, as he does. So sometime after, I think it was around 10 o'clock in the morning, Rader shows up at Vicky's door.
Now, did I read? This is somewhere along the line, whatever he does, whatever job he's in right now, before he goes to the door, he goes somewhere and he changes clothes. I don't know if he's going to the church or what, but he's changing clothes before he goes over there.
Now, so I hope what you're talking about is he changes into a telephone repairman outfit.
Right.
Is that
Yep,
where you're going?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I read that. So he's got on a telephone repairman outfit, complete with hard hat. So he went all out for this one. You know, his ruse. He liked to call them his ruses.
Right. So he's got his hit clothes on then.
Hit clothes. I assume we're going to find out that he's got his hit kit with him as well. He somehow manages to get Vicky to allow him in using this telephone repairman ruse to check the phone line. Again, it's 86, but
right.
You know, those of you out there don't fall for that. He acted like he was fiddling with the phone, messing with it.
Messing around with it. Meanwhile, I think, wasn't her 2-year-old playing on the floor?
I think I read somewhere where I think part of the ruse was he said he had some kind of a new gadget that would make the phone work better or something like that. But it was pretty quickly after that he tells Vicky that she's going to be tied up, right? So we're getting back into familiar territory with Rader, where he's got a gun, tells the person he's going to tie him up. He forces Vicky into the bedroom. As he's tying her up, she's battling the shit out of him.
Yeah, she's pretty strong. She kind of breaks loose on him. Yeah.
She's unlike one of the other ones that I don't want to say went along, but was giving him verbally a lot of a hard time, but wasn't, putting up a physical fight.
Right.
That wasn't Vicky. I mean, she put up a pretty, big time battle, scratched him, clawing at him, doing whatever she could. Ultimately, Rader prevails. He's bigger, stronger, and he is at one point able to secure her with ropes, and he proceeds to strangle her to death using pantyhose. Not sure that this is the first time that he used pantyhose, because then we talk about him leaving some knotted pantyhose. Was that Marine Hedge in the last one?
Can't remember if that was.
It was one of them.
It was one of them.
But
Absolutely.
we weren't sure if that was the ligature or not. But at one point he did leave, some knotted pantyhose at another crime scene. Another thing that he does with this victim that he did in previous situations was that he photographed the body in a bunch of different poses. And that
so this is kind of like the second time he's done that, right?
Yeah, I believe it is the second time. So it's almost like either he enjoyed that and wanted to continue that,
but he didn't remove her from the home like he did the last one, where he went to the church, right, and took the photos.
Right. The last one he actually removed and removed that victim from the home, and
right,
like you said, this one he just took the pictures of Vicky, but again, he leaves in her car.
Right. And he kind of leaves in a hurry because I think I remember that, when he gets there, she tells him that her husband should be calling soon or on his way home soon. So he kind of cleans up pretty fast, thinking that the husband's, on his way home.
Yeah, I think there's something I read that Rader stated afterwards that had the husband come home, he would have killed him too.
Yeah, I don't think he was his luck with men wasn't really his strong point at all.
No.
And I think that's why he made every attempt to try to steer away from men being if they were in the house and such.
Yeah, I think as part of his trolling phase, stalking phase, he did everything he could to make sure that the woman would be alone. It didn't work in the Bright case because Catherine's brother Kevin came home, and that didn't work out too well for Rader, right? He wasn't able to handle. I think his name was Kevin. If I remember.
It was, yep, Kevin.
So I think after that he was pretty leery of having to tangle with men, probably because he was a little bit of a coward probably when it came to that.
Absolutely.
So Vicky's husband does come home though, not too long after Rader gets the heck out of there, and actually quick enough that he sees his own car being driven away by Rader going in the opposite direction. He told the police that he couldn't identify the driver, but he knew it wasn't Vicky. You had mentioned the 2-year-old son, Brandon. So he walks in the house. Brandon's still in the living room, just unattended, playing, doing whatever. Bill is looking for Vicky, can't find her. Ultimately, he does, however, find her on the bedroom floor, behind the bed, calls the police, I don't know at that point if it was 911, I guess. Did they have 911 in 86? I'm sure we did.
Probably did. I don't.
But she's rushed to the hospital. Paramedics tried to revive her, but it wasn't to be, and she was pronounced dead not too long after getting to the hospital. So BTK's driving around in their car. He's looking for a place to dispose of evidence, and he ultimately parks the Wegerle's car just a couple blocks from their home. Gets out, and as he had done on pretty much all of his previous incidents, he walks on foot back to where he had parked his own car, and he changes clothes.
Was it Dylan's again?
I don't know. I don't have it written down. Maybe he'll say it because we do have him on tape describing it. And nobody, by the way, emailed me to tell me what Dylan's is.
Oh, okay. We still don't know. I
was shocked at the lack of listener participation. I was sure somebody from that area was going to email in and say, Dylan's is a department store, you dumbass. But nobody did. I was waiting on it.
It still might come.
Yeah. So, there's some things that happened to Vicky's husband, Bill, after this incident, because Rader's never suspected of this crime. He's not suspected of any of the crimes.
Right.
Until, as we've already said, 2004 to 2005-ish. So at this point, it's 1986, and Bill Wegerle has lost his wife. He's lost the mother of his 2 children, because I guess they had another child too. He was looked at intensely for this crime, and that's not too surprising because normally the husband is.
Right. That's typically this.
And obviously it's sad that Vicky was killed and he had lost her, but it's also sad that he was suspected of this crime for the next 18 years until it was ultimately proven that it had been committed by Dennis Rader. Luckily, he was not charged or prosecuted or even put in jail. We hear that a lot on some of these cases where people are being exonerated now by DNA.
Still, bet a lot of people owed him a big apology down the road.
I'm sure they did. The police force, from what it sounded like, as well they should have, the husband or the spouse is always normally the first person that is looked at, but it is sad that this cloud of suspicion hung over him for such a long time. So let's hear Rader talk about the Vicky Wegerle murder in his own words.
Again, Vicky Wegerle was another potential victim. I went through those different phases, locked in on her, as I would call it, and decided that I would try that date. I used Roos as a telephone repairman to get in their house. Drove there in my own personal car around lunchtime, during lunch hour, or approximately that time. It was earlier in the morning than that. And I actually went somewhere else and changed my clothes, what I call my hit clothes. And
hit clothes?
Hit clothes. Basically different, things that I'd need to get rid of later. Not the same kind of clothes I had on. I don't know what other better word to use it, crime clothes or hit clothes. I just call them hit clothes. Anyway, I walked from my car as a telephone repairman. As I walked there, I donned the telephone helmet. I had a briefcase. Went to one other address just to kind of size up the house. I'd walked by it a couple of times, but I wanted to check it a little bit more. As I approached it, I could hear a piano sound, and went to this other door, knocked on him, and told him that we were recently working on telephone repairs in the area, and went to her and knocked on the door and asked her if I could come check her telephone lines inside.
Did she allow you in?
Yes, she did.
What happened then?
Went over and found out where the telephone was, simulated that I was checking the telephone. I had a make-believe instrument, and after she was looking away, I drew a pistol at her and asked her if she'd go back to the bedroom with me.
Was this the same .357 Magnum you'd used?
No,
or
this was a different one.
different pistol? Or you asked her to go back to the bedroom with you after drawing a pistol on her?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
I told her, we went back to the bedroom, I told her I was going to have to tie her up. She was very upset, and I think I used some material that was in, and that's another thing, I'm not sure, but I think I used the material that they had in their bedroom, and after I tied her hands, she broke that and we started fighting, and we fought quite a bit, back and forth.
All right, she was physically fighting you?
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
What happened then?
Finally got the hand on her and got a nylon sock and started strangling her.
So you wrapped the stocking around her neck?
Yes.
What happened then?
I finally gained on her and put her down, and I thought she was dead, but apparently she wasn't. But after she was down and not moving anymore, I rearranged her clothes a little bit and took some quick photos. I think 3 of them, if I remember. And then after that, there was a lot of commotion. She had mentioned something about her husband coming home, so I got out there pretty quick. The dogs were raising a lot of cane in the back. The windows were all open to the house. There was a lot of noise when we were fighting, so I left pretty quickly after that. Put everything in the briefcase and I'd already gone through her purse and got the keys to the car and used her car for my getaway car.
All right, now you indicate that you thought that she was dead. Did you discover later that she was not dead?
Yes, I guess the paramedics arrived and they tried to attempt to revive her, and that failed. I don't know whether she died there or on the way to the hospital or at the hospital. I don't recollect.
But you later found out that she did die as a result of your strangulation.
Yes.
A couple of things there, Gibby. And almost every one of these, he says, I thought she was down, but then found out that she wasn't.
Right.
Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's almost like he thinks he's killed them, but I think what he's done, they've
passed out. Right. That's what I was thinking.
And he's not really verifying, by looking for a pulse or something to see if they're actually dead.
Yeah, I just that jumped out at me because he said that on almost every one. I thought she was down. He said it a bunch about the Otero family.
Right. I think almost every one he's had to go back a second time around, it seems like.
Yeah, and he did talk about his hit clothes.
True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp. Folks, therapy can feel like a big investment, but let's think about the state of your mind. It's just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save, on average, up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. And you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. I've used the BetterHelp service for years. And I love the fact that, I can connect with a therapist in a comfortable spot in my home on my laptop. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/TCAT today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TCATT. Even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details.
Well, we're now at the last murder. The last murder would not occur until 1991. So again, we've talked about this before, but BTK takes breaks.
Yeah, where'd he go?
Yeah, what does he do?
I mean, it was 5 years, right?
I think there's very few killers or serial killers that can put off their factor X, I'll call it, because that's what he called it.
Right.
But whatever that is that's driving them for the amount of time that he does in between crimes, that fascinates me, because I don't think most serial killers are able to do it like that, but he somehow does.
And I don't think that he committed any other ones in between, because I think he would revel in taking the credit for it, right?
Yeah, I think he would have. I think he owned up to everything, and he even tried to take credit at some point for
one that
things that he didn't
even do, right?
That we will probably talk about a little bit later. So it's 1991. Rader at this point is 45 years old. He focuses in on a 62-year-old named Dolores Davis. And I actually did read what you and I had touched on earlier, was that at this point he had become very leery of younger women, where he thought potentially a younger male could be involved. You know, he's 45 years old, which, not to give away anything, but that's
right.
About our age. I don't feel like he should have been that worried, but he obviously, although he was able to overpower women.
Well, he's not a fine specimen like ourselves.
Yeah,
but,
maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
He's not buff, and
right.
It doesn't work out. People are going to laugh that know us
Yeah.
when we say that. So he's focused on Dolores Davis. That's his project. Again, she only lives about a mile or two away from where he does. But there was no indications that he knew her personally, like there was with Maureen Hedge. But one of the questions that did kind of pop up for me is, especially with Maureen Hedge, why so close? Why not go out a little farther? Now, ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? Because they don't catch him.
All his victims are within the city, and I don't really know how big that city is compared to, say Dayton.
I think it's a lot bigger.
So I mean, even if you were in Dayton and did this, right, it'd be very hard to come across somebody that would know you or know of you.
Well, wait a minute. Are we talking Park City or are we talking Wichita?
We're talking Park City.
Okay, Park City I'm sure is smaller than Dayton.
Yeah.
Wichita I think is a lot bigger. But,
Right.
Park City I think is probably a suburb
Okay.
of Wichita is what
Right.
I'm guessing. Nobody's going to correct me because nobody will send the email to tell me what Dillon's is.
Yeah, where Dillon's is, yeah.
So they're not going to correct me. So I can say whatever I want.
That's right. It's a small town. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that he's got a set on him, because he has no problem, like you said, just a mile away. He has no issues, right? I mean, he's picking his victims a mile away from his home. I can't imagine.
Yeah,
He has no fear in that sense.
Right. So, like you said, is it stones? Is it he doesn't give a shit? Is it ignorance?
Well,
I don't think it's ignorance.
No, I think I think he thinks he's smarter than the police.
Right.
So
I think he thinks he's smarter than what he really is.
right, and it adds to his excitement level, knowing that here he's doing something just a few blocks or a mile down from where he lives, and I dare you to find out that it's me.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Dolores Davis. She's, like we said, 62. She's living in Park City, and she's renting a house that is not close to other houses. so she's got a little bit of space.
Yeah, perfect target.
Perfect target. Rader, while he's doing his trolling and stalking, he notices Dolores. He's able to at some point confirm that she's single, she lives alone, she has no neighbors that are very close. So like you said, perfect target for him. Again, we said this is his last murder, but he goes to some very big lengths to create the opportunity to commit the crime. So he's supposed to be on a Boy Scout camping trip. We mentioned that he was a scout leader.
Yeah, he just on same with the other neighbor, right? He was on a scout camping trip and left and came home, did his deed and cleaned up, and then went back to the camp.
Again, he's using facets of previous crimes that. So what's the thought there? That he thought worked, or he thought
I think he
were good ideas or excited him.
right.
Some combination of that. The taking of the pictures he did in a couple of instances. He used this. He used a couple different ruses, although they were different. And then he uses this Boy Scout camping trip twice.
Yeah, for his ultimate alibi, I guess.
Cold night, below freezing. He has to invent an excuse to get away from the camp. I think last time, what was it? A headache. I've got to drive into town to get some
Something like that. Wasn't feeling
aspirin, or he wasn't feeling well or something. But he invents an excuse, and he drives back to his parents' home in North Wichita. And again, I'm saying that Park City is a suburb of Wichita. I'm making an assumption there because he's probably not driving that far to North Wichita. Changes out of his scout uniform, gets into what he calls his hit clothes, and parks his car, I think at a church. And as he had in previous instances, he sets off on foot for Dolores Davis's house. When Rader shows up, Dolores is still awake. Apparently she's reading a book in bed, and he kind of waited just outside of her house. He waited for her to turn off the light, go to sleep. He breaks through the sliding glass door.
Yeah, uses a concrete block he finds.
Which seems like overkill.
I think you would definitely hear him coming at that point.
Well, she had to hear that.
I would think so.
So she does, because she comes out of the bedroom, from apparently what I read, thinking that someone had driven their car through the house. It was so loud.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty loud.
But it turns out to be Rader.
So he's his fantasy play this time. What he's on the run from the cops.
Yeah, I think he goes back to one that he had used in the first couple of murders, which was either I'm a vagrant or I'm on the run. But the bulk of it is I just need food, money, and a car.
Right.
And I'm going to tie you up and I'm going to get out of here.
So I'm just trying to think why he uses that. I guess, does he think, one, he wants them to give up the keys to the car. That's his getaway.
Yes.
And then I'm guessing he thinks that by telling him that, look, I'm just on the run, I need the keys to the car, some cash, I'm going to tie you up, that this puts them at ease. He's thinking they won't struggle as much because they think that he's just going to tie us up and let us go, just give him what he wants and all will be good. But we know he never does that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, because in the previous one, we talked about the fact that I think he told the victim, Wegerly, that he was going to rape her.
Right.
In the previous couple, I think he had said that either in the process of tying up or right before tying up. Well, she obviously didn't want that. No woman would.
Right.
And she put up a hell of a fight. So I think he went back to the I'm wanted, or I just need this, and this, but I got to tie you up. You'll be able to get out. I won't harm you type of play.
Right. So he handcuffs this one at first.
At first.
And then he takes her back and ties her up. Not sure how she gets tied up this time. I know she gets strangled with the pantyhose again. It seems to be his latest way to strangle.
He must have a fascination with pantyhose or something.
Well,
Because he could have used anything, right? He could have used a phone cord, a lamp cord,
a belt.
a belt, any type of thing to strangle. But
He
here's-
really liked those nylons for some reason.
at least 2 or 3 times he's used pantyhose. So that has some significance. It has to.
And he does that thing again where he's in the house. He takes the personal items. Now, this is where he goes back to he did this 2 murders back, right? Where he takes her, wraps her up in a blanket, and then he is putting her in the trunk. I don't know if it's at this point it's in her car. So her body's wrapped in a blanket in her trunk, and then he drives off. At one point, he realizes that he doesn't have his 357, right? He had it when he went into the house, but he doesn't have it with him now. So now he's trying to figure out, where's my gun at? And he realized that he's left it at the victim's house. So he goes back to retrieve the gun. So at this point, he's not afraid that he's going to get caught. Pretty confident. So he drives back. I don't know if he goes back at this point in his car.
Well, he knows nobody's there.
Yeah, he knows what he's there. So he goes back and gets the finds the gun, gets the gun, and then he drives away and eventually disposes of the body.
Yeah, kind of like it was 2 or 3 back where he just kind of dumped the body on the side of the road under some trees.
Yeah, put some brush on it or something.
Yeah, he's not going through any big effort to, dig a hole or just he's not trying to hide these bodies at all.
It's just really weird how he took it to another level where he removed the body.
So then he changes back into a scout uniform, ultimately ends up back at the scout camp, right? Couple of things I had written down. Apparently he drew a sketch of Dolores's final moments.
Really?
Sometime soon after the murder. And I don't know if that was, obviously it must have been found in his possession when he's ultimately caught, because I don't know how else they would have known about it.
Right.
The other thing is that I thought he threw her car keys on the roof. I have no idea why. That makes no sense to me, but
doesn't me either.
I had read it somewhere, so I wrote it down.
So he takes her body way off in her car and then comes back and parks the car and then throws the keys up on the roof.
Yeah. But that's not it, right? That's not the end of this story. Because the very next night, he leaves the Boy Scout camp again, and he drives to the spot where he had dumped her body, and he takes pictures of it. So I don't know if he was in a hurry, things that weren't going right that first night, and he forgot to, but he had been, he'd gotten into this habit of taking pictures, probably as mementos.
Right.
And so that's probably eating away at him that, hey, I didn't take my pictures. So the next night he goes back and he photographs the body and ultimately ends up having an encounter with the police officer at a place where he was changing clothes. I'm sure maybe back into his Boy Scout clothes. It doesn't say that, but I'm not sure.
And the other interesting fact with this one is that Dolores' son happens to be a law enforcement officer. He's the one that I believe finds the body.
And I had one other thing written down that I thought was interesting, and that was that, I had said he's not trying to conceal these bodies, but apparently he had dug a grave for Dolores. For some reason, he didn't use it. He didn't put her in it. But at some point, he does go back to this grave, gets in the grave. He has a mask on, and using the old Polaroid cameras that we all remember from back in the day,
right,
and some type of a cord that he's rigged up. Today you just set your phone on, or your phone,
yeah,
right? You
on a timer.
Yeah, your camera or whatever on a timer. Back then, he rigged up some kind of mechanism to allow him to take what would now be called a selfie, lying in this grave that he had dug for Dolores, but he's got a mask on.
BTK selfie.
Yeah, BTK selfie. But ultimately, again, this is something that they find probably in his possession, because he would have kept all this.
It's all probably packed in his hit kit.
This is stuff that he would have pulled out from time to time.
Maybe it was up in the treehouse.
In the treehouse. A lot of serial killers do that, right? They take mementos, they get them out later on and relive what they...
Well, we know what he was doing with them.
Yeah, well, we do know. So that is officially his last murder, and that's 1991. We've already told everyone that he's not caught until 2005. That's a long time.
Yeah, where'd he go? What happened?
Yeah, he doesn't kill anybody apparently, because we think he would have confessed to it. The only couple of things we know, and you touched on this in the very first episode, that in 91, that's when he was hired as the supervisor of the compliance department there in Park City.
Right.
That's when he got all that power, and he was giving the folks of Park City a hard time, I think. So you had said back then that alone probably saved some number of lives.
Oh, I think so. I think it was an outlet for him for sure.
I guess for me, the one thing I can't figure out is, we agree that Rader's a sexual sadist, right? You would agree with that.
Absolutely.
So that pull, and we'll call it Factor X because he calls it Factor X, does that go away? I mean, I guess I just don't, he never kills again. If he's not caught, would he have ever killed again? And why not? And where does the compulsion or frog demon, as you called it,
frog demon? Yeah, I don't know. So when did he start working at the church?
I don't know. I think he was at the church for quite a while. I don't know when he actually,
because we know he took the one body there, right?
Yeah. At some point, he was elected as some kind of president of the congregation, they called it. But yeah, there's something, and I don't know the answer, so it's I'm just putting it out there. I
don't think anybody knows. I don't think anybody. The only person that knows is him, right? So,
and we've got a lot of sound bites for Dennis Rader, but I don't have anything of him, or I never read anything that talked about how he was able to satisfy the sexual sadism part of his problem during these, either the 3 or 4 hiatuses that he took before, or this long 14-year period.
Yeah, and I don't think Judge Waller ever asked him either. I think he just wanted to know about the crimes. And
yeah, we did not hear him talk about Dolores Davis, though, so let's hear that real quick.
That particular day I had some commitments. I left those, went to one place, changed my clothes, went to another place, parked my car, finally made arrangements on my hit kit, my clothes, and then walked to that residence. After spending some time at that residence, it was very cold at night. Had reservations about going in. I had cased the place before, and I really couldn't figure out how to get in, and she was in the house, so I finally just selected a concrete block and threw it through the plate glass window on the east and came on in.
All right, where is this residence located?
It's on Hillside, but I couldn't give you an address. I know it's probably 61, probably 62 something. Oh, 62 something.
North or south?
North Hillside.
All right, so you used a concrete block to break the window?
Mm-hmm. Plate glass window, patio door. Mm-hmm.
What happened then?
Noise. I just went in. She came out of the bedroom and thought that a car had hit her house. And I told her that I used the roofs of being wanted. I was on the run. I needed food, car, warm up. And I asked her, I handcuffed her and kind of talked to her, told her that I would like to get some food, get her keys to her car, and kind of rest assured, talked with her a little bit and calmed her down a little bit. And then eventually I checked, I think she was still handcuffed. I went back and checked out where the car was, stimulated getting some food, odds and ends in the house that Alika was leaving. Then went back and removed her handcuffs and then tied her up, and then eventually strangled her.
Or you say eventually strangled her?
Well, after I tied her up, I went through some things in the room there and then strangled her.
You say you went through, were you looking for something?
Mm-hmm. Well, some personal items, yes. I took some personal items from there.
Did you take personal items in every one of these incidents?
I did on the hedge. I don't remember anything of Vicky's place. The Oteros, we got the watch and the radio. I don't think I did any of Bright's. Vian's, no, I don't think so. Fox, yes, I took some things from Fox. It was hit and miss.
All right. But
Probably if it was a controlled situation where I had more time, I took something. But if it was a confusion and other things, I didn't, because I was trying to get out of there.
All right. So in regard to the Davis matter, you went around the room, took a few personal things. What did you do then?
Strangled her.
What did you strangle her with?
Pantyhose.
All right. What happened then?
Kind of like Mrs. Hedge. I already figured out I had a plan on leaving and put her in a blanket and drug her to the car and put her in the trunk of the car.
So you were able to strangle her to death with these pantyhose?
Yes, sir.
All right. You put her in your car?
In her car.
In the car?
Her car. The trunk of her car.
What happened then?
I really had a commitment I needed to go to, so I moved her to one spot, took her out of her car. This gets complicated. Then the stuff I had, clothes, gun, whatever, I took that to another spot in her car, dumped that off. Okay. Then took her car back to her house, left that, let me think now. Okay. In the interim, I took her car back to her house. In the interim, I realized that I had lost one of my guns. I dropped it somewhere. So I was trying to figure out where my gun was. So I went back in the house, realized I had dropped it when I broke the plate glass window. It dropped and fell on the floor right there, and I found it right there. So that solved that problem. Anyway, I went back out, threw the keys, checked the car real quick, and threw the keys up on top of the roof of her house, walked from her car back to my car, took my car, drove it back, and I either dropped more stuff off or I picked her up and put them in my car. And then I drove up northeast of Sedgwick County and dropped her off underneath the bridge.
So you guys can't see it, but Gibby and I are sitting here laughing as Rader's talking because, I mean, to me, he sounds like a bumbling idiot. You know, I dropped my keys. I didn't know where they were. That popping sound you heard, that was not us. That was really Dennis Rader, like a 10-year-old kid popping his mouth while he was trying to think.
Just very, very strange.
Yeah.
Very, again, I mean, of course, I know this is many, many years after he committed the murder. But again, I mean, no remorse, basically, just like he's just trying to tell you pretty nonchalant. Yeah, so I went there, did this. Yeah, then I did that.
But, you know, it's funny. It is a long time afterwards. I don't know that if he was giving that statement the day after that it would be any different.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
Because he's a psychopath.
Right.
He has no empathy. Now we're going to hear later a little bit more from him in his own words. He's going to act like he does, but I don't think he does.
And I think he's, still thinking that, without him doing this, you wouldn't have been able to find out that was me.
Right.
I think he has this thing that he feels he's still helping everybody out. by
Right.
giving him all this information.
You know, my wife and I do a lot of shopping online, and we always use Rakuten. Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. We're talking fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Macy's, Nike, Sephora, Dyson, and Lowe's. And that's just to name a few. Pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cashback. Cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or Rakuten can send you a check. You can even maximize your savings by stacking cash back on top of other deals, like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It really is a no-brainer. Membership is free, and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cash back really adds up. Hey folks, see if you've ever had this problem. You're trying to eat a little healthier, but you're in the grocery store aisle, you're looking at packaging, nutrition labels, and they're so confusing, you don't know what's good for you and what's not. Well, this is why I love Thrive Market, my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered, and I don't even have to leave my couch. Finding better options for the whole family is easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. Just scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. This is how my wife and I found our new favorite snack, IQ bars. Sometimes I eat one in the morning with my coffee, sometimes just later on in between meals. They also have so many on-site filters that make it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in the family. Maybe you have someone who needs gluten-free food, somebody that has a peanut allergy. Well, no more scouring ingredient labels when you can just filter it all on Thrive Market. My wife and I often use the high protein filter to stock up on things like Sieti chips. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/TCATT. thrivemarket.com/TCAT.
Well, listen, we've got a lot more to get into. We're getting ready to get into some fascinating parts of the end of the case, where he's taunting, the media and the police, and his ultimate capture. All right, Gibbs, this is an interesting part for me.
Yeah, this is a part I think you've been waiting for.
It really is. I mean, the murders are one thing. You feel for the victims. There's some crazy things that happen, but the craziness for me happens starting in 2004. So Dennis Rader has not killed anybody for what is basically 13 years. And like we said, we don't know if he was planning on ever killing anybody again.
Right.
Or if he would have just lived out the rest of his life as a church member, compliance officer, husband, father. I don't know.
Yeah, at this point, he's in the clear. He can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have anything coming down on him.
So, but what happens is we get to some milestones, right? So we start to get to some anniversaries of the original killings, and the Wichita press, as they would do in a lot of areas where you have a pretty famous unsolved crime, they come out with some stories. I think there were some books written, maybe, about BTK and things like that. I think Rader gets jealous. I think he gets jealous when he starts to see these stories pop up again, and he starts, which he hasn't done this whole time, he starts communicating again with the local media. So in March of 2004, he sends a letter to the Wichita Eagle in which he claims that he's the murderer of Vicki Wegerle. And he even encloses some photographs of the crime scene. He's got a photocopy of her driver's license that he's able to include. So, I mean, no doubt, right? They get this. The police gets this. They know without a doubt that whoever sent this letter
BTK.
is BTK. Now, the interesting thing about the letter is that the return address he uses is Bill Thomas Kilman, which obviously stands for
BTK.
BTK. Even you and I can figure that out.
If I figure it out, anybody can.
And we're not that bright.
Well,
So that's his first letter, and that kind of ramps him up, because there again, that letter's received. There's even more publicity. It's in the news. He's getting all hyped up. He's probably wearing some panties like the old days, and he's all jazzed. So in May of 2004, he sends a word puzzle to a local station, and in June, there is a package found taped to a stop sign in Wichita, which contained very graphic descriptions of the Otero murders. And there was also a sketch that he called "The Sexual Thrill Is My Bill." Not only that, but he enclosed a chapter list for a proposed book that was entitled "The BTK Story." So, I mean, he's going all out at this point. He's just saying, I'm back. I haven't killed anybody, but I'm going to scare the living shit out of everybody in the Wichita and surrounding area.
yeah, take notice. I mean, that's what he's doing. He's telling everybody, take notice.
Yeah.
I'm still here. Don't think I went away.
So people probably relaxed in that 13-year drought. And I guarantee, I don't know what the gun laws were in the state of Kansas in 2004, but I imagine gun sales went through the roof. If they had concealed carry, I imagine that people were, flocking to get that. So in July, Rader drops a package into the return slot at the public library. And this package contains a whole bunch of weird stuff in it. There's a claim in there that he was responsible for the death of a 19-year-old named Jake Allen in a city called Argonia, Kansas, that had just occurred earlier that month. That claim was ultimately, ruled to be false, and the death was determined to be a suicide. But like we talked about, again, he's claiming responsibility for things that he didn't even do. There's no doubt in my mind that if there were additional murders other than the 10, he would have said, he already, he ultimately admits to the 10. He would have admitted to anything else, I believe. So we get to October of 2004, and a manila envelope is dropped into a UPS box in Wichita. And this one's pretty sick because it contains a series of cards that have these images on them. It's bondage of children and just these terrorizing images that are pasted on these cards. Also included is a poem which threatens the life of the lead investigator that's on the BTK case. And this is how crazy Rader is. He includes his own fake autobiography inside this package, and which supposedly contains details about his life. They're all false, right? He's not giving them real details,
right.
But these details were at some point released to the public. At least he was smart enough to, not give them real details, I guess. So there's a lot of packages here. So December 2004, the police now get a package from the BTK killer. It's found in a place called Murdoch Park. And in this package, Rader puts the driver's license of Nancy Fox, which the police had known was stolen. They never found her driver's license. Also in there is a doll that Rader somehow had bound. He bound the hands and the feet, and he tied a plastic bag over this doll's head.
To show how he did.
I guess. I mean,
Orteros and
he's sitting around in his panties, playing with dolls.
in his
treehouse, doing his thing. I don't know. He could have. He would have never been caught, right? He may have never been caught. DNA would have maybe caught up with him at some point, but there's a good chance he may have never been caught. Like the Zodiac has never been caught.
Right.
He could somehow put this maybe this replaced the sexual aspect of it Was this taunting? Maybe he got a similar thrill out of this, even though he did, it was 13, 14 years after his last murder. So now we're all the way into 2005. January, Rader leaves or he tries to leave a cereal box in the bed of a pickup truck at a Home Depot. But the owner throws it away, tosses it out, and it was later retrieved from the trash. And the only reason that they went looking for it is because Rader, in a later message, asked what happened to the box. So that was something he tried to do that just didn't land. It didn't work because
He's really proud of his cat and mouse game.
yeah, he really was. Now this is the first time, because of I guess the information that he had given the police, they were able to actually get a surveillance tape from the Home Depot parking lot. They saw a figure driving a black Jeep Cherokee stop and actually leave the cereal box in the pickup. Now they can't make it out. They don't know who it is. It's pretty,
Right.
distant and
But
shady.
they know the make of vehicle.
Yeah. So they got the vehicle. They can't tell who it is exactly. And then in February, just a month later, there's more postcards sent to the local TV station. He leaves another cereal box in a rural location. This one has another doll that's all bound up. And this one is apparently meant to symbolize the murder of Josephine Otero. And I know it's been a long time since episode 1, but Josephine was the 11-year-old in the Otero family that was hung in the basement.
So why cereal boxes? Is it supposed to reference serial killer?
That's my thought.
He just doesn't realize how they spell it, or what?
That's my thought. We know he's not, the smartest. And I'm torn on that. I think in some ways he is intelligent, and in some ways he's not.
And and again, it could be part of the game, right? He could be acting, trying to think he's throwing people off by acting less intelligent than he is. I don't know.
Yeah, we talked about that where he did that in his writings. But then we get into him writing some letters to the police, and in these letters, Rader asked the police if he can put information on a floppy disk, and whether or not if he does this, can they trace it? So the police, and they're going back through like newspaper ads and some things like that. And I've got some of these pictures, I've got the postcards, I've got the some of this communication, and so look for that on Instagram and Facebook and other places. But so the police are answering his question via newspaper ad in the Wichita Eagle, and what do they tell him? What are they going to tell him? Yeah, no, we can't trace any information on a floppy disk. But ultimately, we all know now that they can.
Right.
No data is ever really gone.
Yeah, nothing's ever deleted unless you burn it, I guess.
Yeah, that's why I tell my kids, be careful what you put on the web, because it'll live forever. And a lot of that same thing goes with hard drives. And, even if you erase a hard drive, there's some 13-year-old kid that could, in about 3 seconds, pull everything up that was ever on it, probably.
Unless you bleach it, whatever that is, whatever that software is that was in the news during the election.
No, I must have missed that. I thought you were going to give more secrets. I thought we were going to get a Gibby secret.
I can't give too much away.
So now we've gotten to the part where Rader wants to put information on a floppy disk. This will be his last communication with the media and police, and he sends a floppy disk. And most people nowadays don't even know what the hell a floppy disk is, but a lot of us in our, I don't know how old you have to be. I mean, we're in our 40s, so you got to at least be in your 30s probably to remember a floppy disk.
Maybe.
And then we're talking which floppy disk, the great big the one that was actually floppy,
right,
or the one that was like the harder plastic,
the 3.5-inch one.
Yeah, I think at this time this was the harder, smaller plastic one. But he sends a Memorex floppy disk to the media and the police in February of 2005. Also, he puts in this package photocopy of a 1989 novel about a serial killer. It was called Rules of Prey, and a gold colored necklace with a large medallion. I don't know what any of that other stuff means. And I never read exactly what it was supposed to represent, whether it was like the necklace and the medallion. I never read if it was something he took from a victim,
Right. If it came from the crime scene,
or if it was supposed to symbolize something. I never got it. So police have the disc. It's not very hard for them to uncover the metadata that's embedded on the disk, because basically there was a bunch of Word documents that had been saved on this disk. So they were able to get this metadata on there off of it, and it basically tells them that it was used and these documents were saved at the Christ Lutheran Church, and the document was marked as last being saved or modified by Dennis. Didn't have the last name, but just said Dennis. Not too hard for them to, the church has a website, so they do a quick search of the church's website, and it turns up that Dennis Rader is the president of the Congregation Council. It's at this point that police begin to surveil Dennis Rader. I mean, they're on him, right? He's almost as good as caught at this point.
pretty much, yeah. Because don't they drive by his house and they see a black Jeep in the driveway, and then they start putting it all together.
Yeah, they do. They're doing surveillance. They know he drives the black Jeep. It's also during this period that they get a warrant for the medical records of Dennis Rader's daughter. They're able to match her DNA. I mean, they don't even need his DNA, right? I'm not sure why they took her DNA as opposed to...
Yeah, I think that it was easy for them to do that because they didn't have to give him heads up that they were doing this yet. So they wanted to make sure, right? So they went and got that DNA
before they went any
further.
Alerted him. Yeah. So they're testing the DNA, and it comes back that it's a family match with the semen collected at earlier BTK crime scenes. Going back to the first episode and even into the second, we were pretty graphic, right? The guy left semen everywhere. So it wasn't, they obviously had samples of his DNA, and it came up as a match. So they took that evidence. They took the black Jeep, and at that point they knew they had enough, and they stopped Rader on February 25th, 2005. Well, he was pretty close to his house. I think they stopped him. Yeah. I don't know if he was going to or from, but I wrote this down. They had Wichita Police bomb unit truck, 2 SWAT trucks, KBI, which I assume is Kansas Bureau of Investigation, FBI, which we know is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, ATF.
He wasn't going anywhere.
No. So they had 5, 6, 7 different agencies converge on Rader, and this part I wrote down I thought was really...
I didn't even think mall security was there. Mall cop.
I think Paul Blart was there on a Segway.
Yeah.
And he just for the perimeter.
That's right. Just
he was
got it
making
covered.
a perimeter. But I had written this down because I found it, kind of humorous. I know it's hard to be humorous when we're talking about such gruesome stuff, but so they have Rader in handcuffs, and the officer says, well, Mr. Rader, do you know why you're going downtown? And Dennis says, oh, yeah, I've got my suspicions. Yeah, that's all he says. So the police search his home, vehicle. They've got all these agencies. They're collecting every bit of evidence, computer equipment. They did collect a pair of pantyhose from his shed. They also searched his church, his office at City Hall, the main branch of the Park City Library. I'm not exactly sure why they searched that. Is that because I think that's where he may have...
Didn't he He put some notes and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So they removed computers from everywhere. They took his home computer, his work computer. So after his arrest, apparently Rader talked to the police for several hours, and it was then that I guess he did give a reason for why he resurfaced. And I think we touched on it right there at the beginning of this segment, and it was because he had several different reasons, but one of the big ones was the release of this book called Nightmare in Wichita: The Hunt for the BTK Strangler, which was written by a man named Robert Beatty. I'm not sure if he didn't like the way it was written, but basically what he said was he wanted the opportunity to tell his story his own way. And he also, and this is callous as all get out, but he also stated that he was bored because his children had grown up and he had just a lot of time on his hands with nothing to do.
Huh.
He thought he'd dress up dolls, bind up dolls, and scare the shit out of however many people live in Wichita
at that time.
and the surrounding areas. So it was on February 26th that the Wichita Police Department held their press conference, and they were able to announce that they had Rader in custody as the prime suspect in the BTK killings. They formally charged him on February 28th, 2005. Ultimately, Rader pleads guilty to all 10 murders.
Yeah.
He gets 10 consecutive life sentences.
Because they don't do the death penalty there at that time.
Yeah, which seems like a lot. But and it was said to be a minimum of 175 years with no chance for parole.
It's a long time.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I mean, he's not getting out.
Basically, yeah, he's never getting out.
He was never gonna get
and
out.
he was put in solitary confinement where he's in there 23 hours a day, gets to come out for 1 hour of solitary yard play, eat, and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
they say they do that for his own protection because we know how
Somebody would have killed
someone
him
somebody would have got a hold of him, especially for what he did to.
instantly.
Yeah. So
For a couple of different reasons, right? I think you were getting ready to say it, for what he did to kids.
yeah, Josephine, the first one,
Yeah.
right? So
And also for notoriety.
notoriety, right? Exactly.
We've
yeah.
seen that in other cases where,
prison cred.
yeah, you get an amazing amount of notoriety from killing a big time
Yeah.
serial killer.
So he's in there. I think I read that now he gets like 3 hours outside of his confinement for good behavior, and I guess a lot of the victims' families aren't happy with that. They felt that he shouldn't get any special privileges, that he should still be confined to 23 hours in his tiny little cell, and I agree. I mean, it's the fact that he gets out of the cell for 1 hour to see daylight's probably too much.
Yeah, just thinking as a dad or a husband, if that were a member of my family, I don't think I'd feel real good about that. I guess the thing that gets me, and obviously I don't want to get into a death penalty debate or anything like that, but Kansas did reinstate the death penalty in 94, but because his last murder was in 91, he wasn't eligible.
Right.
Even though they didn't catch him, for 10 or 11 years after they had already reinstated the death penalty. So there was a lot of evidence, we touched on a little bit, but I wanted to just kind of go through some of it real quick because none of it came out at trial because he confessed. He pled guilty, but they had the DNA, which we talked about, from semen. They had DNA from underneath fingernails of Vicky Wegerly because she fought so viciously, and all of that matched. They did a lot of analysis on his grammar and writing, and they had some computer communication type stuff. They were able to match a lot of that up. They knew that the payphone that the killer used to report the 77 murder was just blocks from his ADT security. I think we mentioned that. Rader lived on the same street as Marlene Hedge. We talked about that. You mentioned it in the very first episode, but Julie Otero and Catherine Bright both worked at the Coleman Company.
Right.
They put that together. though not, it was stated, though not during the same exact period that Rader worked there. I think one of them was and one of them wasn't.
I know at least, I believe his first victim,
I think Julie was. But
I'm not sure about Bright, that they were at the same time.
Apparently, his confession took 16 hours, over 16 hours. And we've played
Good chunks of it.
We're not, yeah, it wasn't his actual confession, but we've played some stuff from his it wasn't his police confession, right? What we're playing is from courtroom,
right,
where the judge is asking him. But man, I'd like to listen to some of the actual police confession. But it was so long that reportedly took over 20 DVDs to record it all.
Wow.
And it said that he went through all 10 murders in grisly detail. We get to the sentencing, and this is something that, to me, I just found very, very strange, because we said he's sentenced to 10 life sentences, right? 175 years, no parole. But Rader's allowed to speak at his sentencing, which I guess is normal. But he's allowed to speak for 25 minutes, which to me seems like a pretty long time. You know, I've got 2 clips that I want to play from his sentencing, and then we're going to talk about them a little bit, but they're just so strange, I had to include them.
Crimes I committed as continued as the Sedgwick County is a monster. It brought the community, my family, the victims, dishonor. And it's all self-centered, as I would call a sexual predator. Today is my final judgment. For me, the last couple of days in court, presented by the state, their PowerPoint presentation was very powerful. A couple of things I might point out toward the last, but overall, most of that was true. And I think the Sedgwick County ought to be proud that they do have a good state, that the evidence was there earlier, DNA, floppy. There was no way that I was going to get out of this. With remorse, responsibility, and corrections are the concepts of apology. The old me started whatever it was, Factor X, sexual predator. The volcano was the building of all those years, was the Otero. And probably the most devastating and upsetting, let me tell everybody, is Josephine. I just don't know. Self-centered, very selfish, and it exploded on that day. And it did continue, off and on. Dishonesty? Definitely. Dishonesty, probably the first thing to the people that I encountered, that they trusted me, that I was going to tie them up, take their money, and leave. And then I killed them. That's dishonesty to my family. That lie and cheat to be self-interest to my employers and to the county, the taxpayers' money. Pride and responsibility. Yes, I had pride back then. To some degree, I'm trying to drop down to that, but that's the media. They seem to crave the attention of the media. I think through the years that's quite presentation during the presentation and all the archives that I had, you can understand that. I think the bottom line of the old is selfish, very just associated with society, self-centered for my own purposes, and I take that full burden on my shoulders. Victims.
He talks about being self-centered. He is basically describing himself as a psychopath. Psychopath, self-centered, unable to feel empathy for others, has no problem with hurting others, has no guilt, no shame, no remorse. Now, I think he was putting on an act Mike, and I don't know what you think.
Oh yeah, I mean he was doing the standing ovation for the county and the way they.
Yeah, he congratulated the prosecutors on
Thanks for arresting me.
What a good job they did and
finding me and evidence.
At that point it didn't matter. He knew he was caught, and the one thing I think Dennis Rader was able to do from a very early age is I think he learned how to live in two different worlds. Right? He had the one world where he was a husband, a father. He had multiple jobs that he was able to keep for extended periods of time, and he had all that kind of compartmentalized. And then he had this other area where Froggy, the frog demon that you talk about,
right?
Factor X, Project Runway,
yeah.
And
he said he knew at the age of 10 something wasn't right with him.
Yeah,
that he was different.
But I think he started.
Yeah,
I think he started early, learning how to on this side, I'm normal.
Sure.
And on this side, I let my freak flag fly.
He found a way to be deceptive, without being caught.
And he was able to do that successfully for, 30 years since he started killing. But even going back to, like you said, age 10, he was able to do it for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, he's so intriguing that, there's been books, right?
Lots
Stephen
of books.
King, he was kind of an inspiration for Stephen King on one of his books.
Lots of books, lots of movies.
Another, the Red Dragon book.
I did read that.
Yeah.
Which is part of the Silence of the Lambs franchise.
Yeah.
Thomas Harris.
Definitely intriguing killer.
Yeah. He was fascinating. He's one that I knew I wanted to do early on. Like I said, we're going to do a mix of big timers and some smaller ones. We'll probably do a bunch of smaller ones before we do the next big timer. Yeah. But let me play this second sentencing clip, because it's absolutely fascinating what he chooses to say in the time that he has.
Kathleen Bright, and I hope I don't tread on the media, because I did use some of this from the media, because I didn't know this much from people. She spent time on her grandparents' farm. Well, I did too, as a kid. I have many fond memories of that, and I took that from her. She went to Valley Center. I was at Valley Center High School for 2 years. Walked the halls, probably at the same line. Shared maybe the same teachers, although they would have been older. She worked at Coleman, just like I did, trying to fill a job, as anybody would. Try to keep, our heads above water, and I took that from her. Dolores Davis, she loved animals, and I worked as animal control. I realized that in the early years, I probably did have some cruelty to animals. But I don't think, if anybody asked Park City or anything, they would say I was always pretty good to animals. I have a great fondness for animals. I have pets, but I know she had it. And I read somewhere she had her last Christmas with her family. And I did too. That was a wonderful time. But I took that from her. Nancy Fox, she was a wonderful person, and I did track her just like a predator. She was a wonderful young lady, well organized, hard worker, and I took her up. Maria Hedge, she was a neighbor. One to walk by, wave to. A gardener. I loved to garden flowers. She attended church, the same church I'd been to with Boy Scouts. Joseph Luttrell was in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force. He was a husband. I was a husband. Although I always wanted to be a pilot, I always had a fascination with aerodynamics. And he was a pilot. And one time I even thought about taking pilot lessons. And a veteran. I was a veteran. Our threads are close. Julie Otero is a lot like my wife, a loving mother. Raised kids, and she also worked at Coleman. Josephine. She would have been a lot like my daughter at that age. Played with her Barbie dolls. She liked to write poetry. I like to write poetry. She liked to draw. I like to draw. Someone mentioned that she would like peas in a pot. I think that probably comes to Wichita Eagle Peak and write that down. Give it credit to them. Joseph Earl, too. He was just like me at one time, a boy and a dog. And again, that comes from the Eagle. I have many memories of the dog. Excuse me. Anyway, I had a lot of memories as a kid with one of my pets. Boy and a dog is a thing you have to have when you're a kid. Shirley, she was choir mother, probably a very beloved mother, and I took her life. Probably of all the people, I didn't know Vicki Bynum very much, although I walk by her place and can listen to the piano. I appreciate music. That's one thing I always wanted to learn was piano. And I took her life. She's also a beloved mother. She attended a church that I went to once, St. Andrews. I hope I haven't left somebody out on that.
I don't know why, but that makes me physically sick to my stomach.
I actually find it offensive.
Right.
You know, that's to say that he was so alike, that the victims were so like him and he was like them. If I was in that court and I was one of the victim's family, I'd be sick. I mean, sick anyway, but to say that, oh, I like poetry, he liked poetry, we're a lot alike, you know, or they had a dog, I had a dog.
I don't know what it says about me, but that one made me I had a stronger reaction to that one than I did when he talked about each murder for some reason. And I don't know what that says about me, but it was almost like he was eulogizing each of the 10 victims, you know, and saying how great they were, but I killed them.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was just something. It's why I wanted to play that clip. There was just something.
Just pretty sick, actually.
Yeah, there was something about that I had to play. So, Gibby, we made it. I mean, we have wrapped up what seems to be, what will ultimately be, I don't know, probably 4.5 hours on BTK.
Yeah.
But there was just so much information to him. And, you know, some people may say we spent too much time, went into too much detail. We're getting a lot of feedback that people like the details. So there is some happy medium in there, and we'll find it as we go along.
Sure. We just need people to keep giving us feedback.
Yeah.
You know, use the Twitter and use the Facebook and the Instagram, and, you know, let Mike and us know how you feel.
But I think, you know, some of these are fascinating, but a lot of people know who Dennis Rader BTK is, and, you know, a lot of the other ones that we'll do maybe are going to be less well known. But that's it. That's it for the Dennis Rader story. For me, for you, this wraps up the Dennis Rader saga. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
In the early hours of December 4th, 2024, CEO Brian Thompson stepped out onto the streets of Midtown Manhattan.
This assailant pulls out a weapon and starts firing at him.
We're talking about the CEO of the biggest private health insurance corporation in the world.
And the suspect,
he has been identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione,
became one of the most divisive figures in modern criminal history.
It was targeted, premeditated, and meant to sow terror.
I'm Jesse Weber, host of Luigi, produced by Law and Crime and Twist. This is more than a true crime investigation. We explore a uniquely American moment that could change the country forever.
He's awoken the people to a true issue.
Finally, maybe this would lead rich and powerful people to acknowledge the barbaric nature of our healthcare system.
Listen to Law and Crime's Luigi exclusively on Wondery Plus. You can join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.